Welcome, everybody. I'll call this meeting to order. Veronica, would you do roll call, please?
Councilmember Walter. Present. Councilmember Haskell. Here. Councilmember Flynn. Here. Vice Mayor Hefty. Here. Mayor Taylor.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we can skip 7:07. Everybody's here. So the next item on the agenda is a annual committee presentation by the Wildfire Preparedness Committee. Welcome, MJ.
Greg. How do I know if I'm coming across okay?
Just talk.
Just talk right
Yep.
into it. yeah.
You hear an echo, which we can hear.
Thank you for commanding me to be here.
You're very welcome.
Uh, Guess I need to share my slides. All right. So I only recently became chair in around September. Before that, Jennifer Hammer was our chair for several years and just really held the whole committee together and helped us accomplish a couple of wildfire fairs and with the 2401 ordinance. So they're big shoes to fill and I'm doing my best. But anyways, you'll see what we're up to in the next few slides. So in 2025, our major accomplishment is that Jennifer and Wanda Jenner ran they called it insurance tracking report, where they asked people about their experiences with their homeowners insurance over the period of 2020 to 2025. Now, it turned out originally we were going to do a postcard survey, but because of the finances, our budget was canceled. And so we only did it by word of mouth. And we only got 117 people to respond, which is not statistically significant. It's only like 6% response. But I think the data is still very interesting. Of the 117 who did respond, 54 of them were canceled or non-renewed. 30% of them ended up on the FAIR plan. And we know that CDI is now required to post how many people are on the FAIR plan. Oh, that for 94028, it's something like 13%. So the survey isn't that far off, even though we're getting, only 117 people. People also reported that their premiums increased anywhere from 10 to 370%. So we've seen people come under a lot of financial pressure because of the insurance crisis. One thing that Craig pointed out to us, that he thought it would be important data to show whether or not higher density housing affected cancellations or increased premiums. And based on the limited survey response that we got, we saw no correlation. So if that information is still useful for the housing element, there's that information. The main thing that we really learned from the survey, and the conclusion is at the bottom of this slide, and that is that we need Firewise. So it kind of led into, well, I'll get to that. So just some other accomplishments we had in the past year. We published 28 wildfire tips. When we first started doing this, maybe a year or two in, we had about 300 subscribers, and now we're up to 528, with 60 to 70% of them actually opening up the email and reading it. And then in addition, we have people on PV Forum who don't subscribe to the tip, but they can read it there. So I feel like we're getting news out there. What we're not seeing is a lot of response in terms of people doing the mitigation that we would like to see. Other things we did this past year, we hosted 2 speakers. Fire Marshal Gugliacci talked about lessons learned from the LA fires. We had Betsy Firebaugh. She was a CCU survivor. It took her 5 years to rebuild her house. And she gave us photos and talked about her whole experience. And And actually, that is now a pretty well-watched meeting on the Portola Valley website. We also did an audience brainstorm with people who showed up to our meeting, and we talked about how do we get to 100% Firewise. So I listed that as an accomplishment. We also created a new set of goals, and we changed our charter, which you guys should be familiar with. I wanted to increase the number of members so that, you know, we had enough manpower to do this 100% Firewise. I mean, the hardest part of doing this is finding block leaders. And I figured we're not going to do it. We're not going to accomplish it with maybe just 3 people working on a subcommittee. We need to get more people on the committee and use those people. And also you town council members use you as well to get more people on Firewise and to kind of help us push it. We also had 2 members, me and Patty Dews, were now certified as CAL FIRE defensible space assessors, which means that we can do an inspection almost at the same level as a CAL FIRE inspector. So what CAL FIRE wants is for us to go out there, talk neighbor to neighbor, and help people understand what needs to be done. And it's, you know, less of a situation of less threatening if it's a neighbor talking to you about what you need to do to mitigate your home. Patty and I have also been attending WPV Ready meetings, the monthly meetings, so we're communicating more with their leadership. And actually, I am seeing a lot more collaboration between us. It's been a really good thing. Okay. And then lastly, on behalf of Darcy, I attended a couple of Sam Liccardo wildfire meetings. He was trying to see what, you know, the federal government could do at a regional level. He said there wasn't any money, but at least he could coordinate, you know, people or groups within the region. Of course, we haven't had another meeting since the war started, so I'm not sure if that will continue at all. So why is Firewise our #1 goal? As I said, Portola Valley has to reduce its wildfire risk. We're not going to solve the insurance crisis unless we actually start doing something, not just on an individual level, but we have to do it at a community scale. What the industry wants to see, the insurance industry, they want to see 80% participation, you know, within a neighborhood so that they feel comfortable thinking that that neighborhood has definitely lowered its risk and is a safer bet for insurance coverage. So I studied this for a long time, you know, read the articles and watched webinars and everything. And there's 3 things that really get people to start mitigating. One is if they see their neighbors doing it or a leader in the community. There's a little Tahoe Donner report that just came out where they said that 39% of people were motivated to act when they saw their neighborhood leader or an official do mitigation. So that's why a lot of researchers point to, you know, leading by example, neighbor to neighbor, one-on-one. They think that's the best way to do this. The second, maybe more efficient way is through inspection and enforcement. And, you know, nobody really wants to have a hammer on your head to do your mitigation. So even the fire district doesn't want to do that. So they want to work with us. They want to use our DSAs, and they would like to use our Firewise block leaders to try to schedule a block at a time to do these inspections. So right now, 50% of Portola Valley is on Firewise. It's organized in 7 different communities. That's about 900 homes. And I figure we have another 900 to do. Right now at the bottom of the slide, you can see there's 3 communities, two which are, one which is very interested, led by Karen Askey. The second one is a smaller community, Portola Green Circle. And they're interested, but, you know, like Helen Walter was saying to me, you know, you have to identify the leaders and then make sure they stay on the ball. And so I'm realizing that even though people are telling me they're interested, you know, I as a chairperson, and Patty and Wanda and Vivek, their new member, we all have to start kind of nudging people along. It's not going to happen by just being nice. We kind of have to like check in and see how you're doing and how can I help you. So I think we'll get there, but we're going to have to really push to make it happen. So this is a outdated map that shows the green areas are areas that are Firewise, and you can see it's about half. There's a couple neighborhoods not in here. And just last week, I had a young man. He's a forestry master's student. Right now, he's in Austria getting his degree, and then he's going to go to Vancouver. But he's volunteered to help do our GIS maps going forward. So he won't be a member of the committee, but will be a useful volunteer. Okay, so Patty and Wanda are working on we're calling it the 100% plan to get 100% of households on Firewise. So right now they have 2 steps. One, to develop a starter kit, because frankly, when you go to the NFPA website, looking at Firewise, you know, there's a ton of stuff to read. It's overwhelming and it makes you want to turn around and give up. So we want to distill it down to, you know, a 1-page document, a 1-page list of responsibilities for the block leaders, and a list of resources within the community that they can contact. And then once we have that, then we need the rollout plan. And they have a lot of ideas here about how to do it. If you have more ideas, let me know. We've submitted an insert for the next newsletter, and we'll see where it goes from there. This is just a slide I had from after we had our brainstorm, and I just wanted to point out at the bottom how Kim Gugliacci, the reason why she's so supportive of Firewise is because she says it gives us direction and focus, and this whole feeling of we're doing this together. And she says there are no disadvantages in becoming Firewise. For her, it's hard to contact every person in the district, so we are the best way to get this done. Okay, as far as budget, Rebecca told me I needed to end with a budget, so even though, so I did it, you know, a swag. You guys know what a swag is? A scientific wild ass guess. So, I just wrote down $5,000. I figured, you know, I know Darcy would like us to do some in-person events and maybe a Firewise Day, maybe tie it to the NFPA events in October. So I just put in $2,000 for that kind of thing. And then based on Patty Dew's experience with a survey that she ran last year, and she told me that she felt the postcard made a big difference. She got a huge response, like 80% or something. And so I just wanted to keep that in the budget in case, you know, all the outreach we try doesn't work, then I'd like to try a postcard. So, any questions?
Great, thanks, MJ, and thanks for being chair. I think you'll do a great job. So, questions for MJ? Start down at you, with you, Rebecca.
Do you, I would assume that you have a list of the communities that haven't joined yet. Is that something you could just put out on the PV forum? You know, just sort of, or at least send it maybe to us, just so that, you know, we can kind of look at the neighborhood and see if we know someone in that neighborhood that we could sort of do some arm twisting or something.
Yeah, that's why I tried to recruit a GIS person, because we don't have that, and we'd like to have a nice, easy way for people to see that they or are not in a Firewise community. Kim Guglielmi on the Woodside Fire District, she does have a way for you can now see a map and you can put in your address and it will tell you you're in a Firewise community, but it's using wrong information. It's using the planned Firewise communities that Chip Swan laid out. It's not using the actual one. So we need to get that updated. But we would like to have our own map as well.
And then Westridge is a really very large Firewise community, and I really appreciate the fact that Patty went through all the work to get all of us in there. But it sounds like you also need some block leaders from within Westridge, right, to support her. Is that the case, or?
Yeah, she has 19 assigned, but two of them left the area like Rusty Day. So yeah, and she hasn't replaced them yet.
And then my understanding is that Firewise, once you get set up and get approved by the organization that does the approval, every year you're supposed to do some work in your little neighborhood. Is that correct?
Every year you're supposed to, by November, you're supposed to report how much mitigation you did, and it can be dollars and hours. So just to give an example. So like we started in 2024 and in my block, I only got 10 homes to report to me and they reported $20,000. But, like every quarter I send out an email, I remind people, let me know your numbers. And I tell them, just email me your numbers as you get them. That's fine, or do it at the end. And then by the next year, I almost doubled it. And plus, but the amount spent was up 10 times. So I think if we just keep hammering away and we'll get there. But you do, Patty, what she did for Westridge this past year, other than my block, she did a survey, and just a Google form, and she told people to just submit. And she got maybe an equal number to the number of people I got. And I think that you really have to have this human touch in there. If you just tell people, fill out this survey, I don't think that works as well. So what I'm trying to build is we have to have community. Without community, it's not going to happen. We're just going to read my newsletters or tips, or we're going to do this, but we're not going to take that next step about actually doing the work.
So I'm in the Westridge one and I didn't get any. So just, you may not have everybody's email in the whole.
Yeah, actually, you're in one of the areas that doesn't have a block leader.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that seems like an opportunity, Rebecca.
There you go, yeah.
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 No, we want her to stay on our committee as liaison.
We have a lot of
I'll
confidence.
think about my neighborhood.
Well, no, just send us a victim.
Is that it, Rebecca? Thank you. Judith?
Yeah, just one question, and it's to kind of give a summary, please, of the point that is in the second bullet on this slide, which is the link between being Firewise and what the insurance requirement or industry is going to reward. Because I see that some people in your survey mitigated and it didn't matter. So could you explain a little bit more, whether it's from public domain information or what you found out of the data
You mean-
about if you're in a Firewise community, what is the effect on insurance, or what has the industry said it would do if you're in a Firewise community?
I haven't seen any papers that have talk about a direct correlation between being in a Firewise community and having reduced insurance. But this number here, I know from, listening and reading so many industry reports that what they are looking for. And they're starting to set up pilots and things like this where they're trying to see what happens if you get 80% mitigation. And what does that do? Then you get the mitigation and then you run your simulations and what does that really do? So like there's a pilot that Helen's trying to get us into where they would look at that kind of data.
So it's not that the industry has stated if you're 80% mitigated, will look favorably. It's in process to be analyzed, like it's a general target. Like, how do we interpret the 80% number here?
That's what the industry, they have a research body.
Mhm.
Yeah, IBHS, and they're the ones that are coming out with this, the wildfire prepared home.
Mhm.
I have a wildfire prepared home. I went through all the steps that they required. And because of that, I was canceled by AAA, but because I got that wildfire prepared home designation, they reinstated me.
Mhm.
And so I still have insurance. And that's through IBHS's industry research arm. But now they're working on wildfire prepared neighborhood. And what they're looking at they're trying to run tests where, the communities are 80% mitigated. That's what they're looking for, so.
Okay, so it's something to watch over the next few years to see whether they reward that or not, because you have respondent number 2 that obtained a wildfire prepared certificate, but the policy was still canceled. So it seems like it's a work in process.
That's interesting. I saw that in Jennifer's report and I tried to find out who is that person because I don't believe that's true because there are 2 people I know of in Portola Valley that have wildfire prepared homes. It's me and this woman across the street.
Okay.
And I know she got reinstated by, now I forgot her insurer, one of the big ones. So but when I asked Jennifer, she couldn't.
Yeah.
She said she didn't know who it was.
Okay, maybe over time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mary?
Thank you for reading the report, though.
Very helpful.
You can count on Judith to read all the details.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
I just wanted to ask whether there was anything else that we can do. I hear the message loud and clear that you want us to put out there to get Firewise support. Is there anything else that we can do to support your committee's work?
Yeah, that's a great question and offer. I mean, basically, if you know anyone that lives in this gray area,
I know a couple of people here.
I don't know, you can sort of see that gray. It's basically, yeah. Like here's Westridge and Cervantes is, I know if I point at it with my finger, that doesn't help, but yeah, Golden Oak, there's all that stuff in the middle. We need Applewood, Nat Forest, yeah, we need to get just in that area because, part of the problem for me personally is I'm not a social person, so I don't know anybody in this town. Oh, you are tons of people. Hey, I know where you live and you're not in the Firewise area. Have you thought about, what it takes to do it? And do you know anyone who can help? That will help us out a lot.
And we send them direct to you.
Yeah, send them to me and then I'll farm them out.
Yeah, because it sure looks like Corte Madera, Brookside. I mean, those look like prime candidates.
Yeah.
Wait, done. It's just not, this is the old La Honda one. So all that stuff off on the far left is part of it.
Yeah. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Helen?
So hi, first of all, thanks for everything you've done. Something, I've been working, I know I'm not the liaison, so I've been trying to talk to people about the Firewise in my neighborhood because I think it's so important. And what I'm running into is that I'm like, what do you want to help? And people are like, I'll help for a little small segment, you know, the 10 households. So I think that's important when you reach out, like you don't need to be the leader of the neighborhood, but would you be willing to do like 10 or 20 houses, right? I think that people like that idea. It definitely helps if we can find leaders in the neighborhood. So I wanted to say that, like, something else MJ brought up the pilot project. One Shoreline did reach out to me about a pilot project in insurance because the insurance industry is using different mapping than CAL FIRE. And right now, One Shoreline is our flood agency. For those who don't know the agency, it's the flood agency for the San Mateo County. And I thought, and when they reached out to me, because I've worked with them for 10 years, when they reached out to me, I said, why the heck are you guys doing wildfire? And they said, because we've been working with them on flood issues for the county. And then the same insurance companies said, we want to talk to you guys about wildfire. So right now they're working with Hillsborough. They're interested potentially in working with Portola Valley, which is why they reached out to me. And I looped MJN and Rebecca, and that's as far as we've gotten. So just catching everyone up. We don't know if it will go anywhere, so we're still trying to figure it out. And we don't know what it would cost people, and we don't know. There are a lot of questions that are still to be answered that we're working on. So other questions I had, because I'm not the liaison, is prescribed burns. Has the wildfire committee talked about prescribed burns at all? And I know like the idea scares me to death, but I know it is one of the toolkits that we could have in our tool belt. And just curious.
You know, at our meeting on last week, I did get to ask Kim Gugliacci about that. And she said that anyone who wants to do a prescribed burn on their parcel, their individual parcel, they need to get a permit from her. And she said they need to call because it's not on their website on how you do that. So I guess it is possible, but you know, I was just listening to a prescribed burn podcast. This is how nerdy I've become. Anyways, this guy was saying he does prescribed burns of 2.5 to 5 acre properties. And he needs 15 people to show up and volunteer for that, so actually a prescribed burn, 15 people, you may as well get a bunch of goats or get, you know, maybe do it by hand. I don't know.
Right. So, right. The professor I was talking to you about up at Chico, who does prescribed burns, has offered to come to Portola Valley. So so we need to schedule that. The other question is goats, right? Instead of swag, like, more stuff to go in a landfill or to go into, Goodwill or something. Could we use some of that money to help bring in, do a group buy? It's far more than $5,000. But like if people did a Google form, like who's interested in maybe doing a goat buy for a day or something, and we move them around town, could you guys help coordinate that potentially?
Yeah, I guess we could. I guess.
Just an idea. So
I hadn't thought of actually trying to coordinate it. I had only thought as far as adding it to, adding all the goat people to the, we have a database in PV Forum where I put all the wildfire vendors from our past fairs. And I was thinking of just adding all the goat vendors in there, but which is, pretty passive little action, but I could put out the word and see who really wants to use goats, and yeah, maybe we could do a group buy.
right.
I'd have to talk to some goat herders to see if it's possible if the lots aren't contiguous.
Right. So I have the name of one that said she would do it if it's not contiguous.
Oh, really?
And her name is, it's and distinctive. Her first name is Billy, so I'll get it to you. So I will get that name to you. So that'd be great. Thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. So again, thank you very much for sharing. So I had a question on non-renewal. When people get non-renewals, what are their options right now?
I think you now have 60 or 90 days to see if they'll reinstate you if you do something like AAA, I believe. Because what they did when they non-renewed me, their letter said, you know, you can get this wildfire prepared home and we'll reinstate you if you do it within 60 days. They also said if you do it within a year, that, you know, you can come back and reapply. So I don't know what other insurers are doing, but I guess it could be possible if you know, if you got the certification before your thing expires.
You know, I guess what I was wondering is, are they legally required if they give you a non-renewal to tell you what you have to do to be back in compliance? Because I thought I remember that that the insurance commissioner was starting to push toward that, but I wasn't sure where that ended up.
I haven't heard or seen anything like
Okay.
that they're legally required to give you a chance to come back.
Got it. Okay, great. So then this vendor list that you mentioned, I wonder if that's not a tip that just says, hey, by the way, we in PV Forum, we collect, you know, these various things. I know you can't recommend specific vendors, but maybe we can just say there's a list out there and we just keep adding stuff to the list. It's up to you to, you know, decide if they're appropriate for your job.
Yeah, I'm actually, well, apparently that's our only option for a vendor list.
Yeah.
Everyone is telling me we can't put our own vendor list on the public web. So our only option is to do this PV Forum thing. And I was thinking of going through all the posts in PV Forum and adding anybody that's, you know, well, verifying with the poster, but adding that person to the database and then pushing the database on our website, you know, to
Yeah,
people that
good.
live in Portola Valley.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was suggesting, because otherwise it's pretty passive. If you just add it, nobody knows it's there.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so,
that's
yeah,
a
yeah.
given that if I add something in there, I tell people,
Yeah.
but yeah, that does seem to be our only option.
Okay, good. And then the last question I had was, is there a way to measure results in terms of certainly like links open, things like that? I mean, when you guys think about various outreach campaigns, do you think about ways to measure results? Because, you know, that's an important part ultimately is, you know, are we getting penetration?
Creation on Firewise,
Yeah, well, I mean, if Firewise is your goal, then if you send, you know, if you put out a postcard, how do you know that anybody looked at your postcard? You know, some way of actually validating that the method, the outreach method that you use was actually, you know, starting to work. So you might, and you don't have to answer it now. I think I'm just putting it out there. Is you might think about, you know, how do you measure the results? Because, you know, that way we can tune going forward. Because I completely agree with your initial premise, which is, you know, reducing risk for Portola Valley is absolutely critical. And I'm really thankful that you guys are, you know, sort of on this day after day, month after month, year after year. So it's absolutely the right thing to be working on. And we just need to figure out how we get that message out, and then are we being successful?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way I look at being successful with Firewise is the number of people who report that they did mitigation and that the dollar amount. I think the fact that I like to think that if we keep spending the money that people are probably spending it, they're just not reporting it. But I think if we all actually start reporting this stuff, and eventually I think the industry is going to find out, hey, you know, Portola Valley residents, they put a lot of money into making themselves fire safe. And, you know, my hope is that that information will arrive somewhere and will be recognized. But yeah, I don't have a metric. So, and as far as a metric for the postcard, I guess I assume if we ever did a postcard or if we got results from the newsletter, it would be because people start emailing me. That metric I have.
Well, or if you had a link on there and they clicked on the link and you kept track of the link counters. I mean, anyway, I didn't want to go into detail here tonight, but just something to think about. So overall though, thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's super informative, and certainly critical for this whole community. So again, thank you, and thank you for being chair.
Okay. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, we're going to move on to the town manager report. Darcy?
Darcy Smith, Town Manager. I have a report. We are recruiting for town committees and more. You can see a list of our openings for town committees on our webpage, but we're also running a special recruitment for a resident to serve on the Board of Trustees of the San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District. So if that's your passion area, like MJ and fire, you too can make it your world. We also will be opening recruitment this week for the Architectural and Site Control Commission. We have had a vacancy for a while, and now that we have our new planning and building director, we're opening the recruitment. Next, we recognize the importance of the town finance audits, and our finance director has been working hard on the audit for 22-23 and is anticipated to be presented to the finance committee in early April and then the council after that. And the remaining audits are on schedule to be completed. And that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Darcy before I move to oral communication? No, okay. All right, so I'd like to open it for oral communication. So this is anything that's not on the agenda, the regular agenda. But if you have comments on the town manager report or on the presentation, you're welcome to those at this time. So does anybody have oral communications? Yes, sir. Please come up to the podium, tell us your name, and you have 3 minutes. You can use the mic if you want to sit, whatever works best for you.
Sure. Craig Carlton Draymond. I've been restoring grasslands for 30 years. I've got 800 acres under my belt, and restored means 95% native cover. I sent your town council 2 sheets by email. Hopefully you got. So what I did a few years ago is I'm working for the town of Woodside, restoring their 14-acre wildflower meadow at Kite Hill. And all we do is we mow monthly to 8 to 12 inches high. We start in February, end in June. And we do soil tests and fertilize to feed the natives. If you visit Kite Hill, it's in full bloom right now. And we don't have any of these anymore. All the flammable wild grasses are gone. When you have grass this tall and you cut it in late spring, it's laying on the ground. You can see from my PowerPoint what I measured in Portola Valley that year, how many pounds per acre you still have on the ground ready to burn in any wildfire. It starts at 2,000 pounds in this community. It went up to 8,000 pounds per acre. Every 100 pounds is equal to 1 gallon of gasoline per acre. So you can have 20 to 80 gallons ready to burn all summer until the winter rains come. That's why I've been hired by Woodside to get rid of that for the safety around the homes there. That's why I was hired by the former fire marshal, Denise, to take care of the 3 acres across from Buck Meadow on Los Trancos. We started with 5-foot tall weeds like this. She said, if a fire comes through this meadow with these weeds, I'll have to leave that subdivision to burn. I cannot get a truck up Los Trancos to save those homes. You've got to take these tall weed grasses and convert them back to fire-safe, low-growing natives. That's why I sent you these 2 pages, and I'm glad I'm following MJ Lee here, 3 years ago, she did a video along Jane Drive when we had the 4-foot tall weeds. If you go there today, it's turning into a poppy meadow that's going to be fire safe. 2 years ago, your fire marshal adopted my method. He put before and after pictures from Kite Hill on the postcard that went to every homeowner in the district saying, mow, see what Craig's doing over there, Kite Hill? Mow monthly, get it down, so by summer, you don't have the fire fuel.
So, hey, Greg, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up. It's
Yeah,
3 minutes, yeah, thanks.
here's pictures of before and after. We start with solid weeds, we end up with solid fire safe wildflowers. This is what this community can do. We worked at the Roth Rocks.
So Greg, I need you to wrap it. Your 3 minutes is up.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
this is Jeff Epstein looking at his fire safe native grasses on his property at the end of Pinion.
Right.
This is what this whole community could do very easily.
Good, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you very much. Any other oral communications? Yeah, please come up to the mic. I'll do it in here first. Thank you, I appreciate it.
I think I know most of you. Bob Adams is my name. And I'm here on the court project, and I understand things changed a bit from the last meeting or the last time that we had the discussion of that. And I've been in the Parks and Rec meeting discussions, and I know that they recommended that the court be done with $35,000, and then it got reversed, and there's no money there now to do that, but you've authorized $45,000 for us to raise our own money. That's what I understand. My concern is not so much that we didn't get the money this year. My concern is much bigger than that. And it has to do with funding on projects that have once in a 10-year life. This is an example of the courts. And just to give this a comparison, if you look at the fields probably cost you $10,000 a month, $15,000 a month to maintain. To maintain a tennis court, almost nothing. They do a little bit of trimming of the bushes next to the courts, and there's just not much there that they have to do. So we fix the nets, we clean the courts, we dry the courts. I was down on my hands and knees repairing the curtain in 70-degree weather for 12 hours. That you'll see if you go over there, you'll see all the grommets that are in place now because it was that way for 2 years, and I decided to fix it. And so really what I'm trying to get to is that we'd like to have a fix for the courts that solves most of the problems. And a fix for the courts that solves most of the problems is going to be about $70,000 because you're moving the basketball nets and you're resurfacing the courts. And we understand that we have to provide some of that money. There's no question. We offered that originally. My concern is that in the budgeting, that if you don't put these things in the budget ahead of time, then you get into the situation that we were in when we had this conflict between the two. Now, can we postpone this for a year, have it in the budget so that you guys can come up with a good portion of it? I think we can do $20,000 to $25,000 fundraising. I'm personally willing to put in $5,000 as soon as I see that we can get some sort of organization to make this work. And I also understand that you have a fund that you might be able to do this with. So I'm not against anything that you're trying to do. I'm just trying to get a process in place so that this funding is not something that's kind of happenstance or comes out of the blue. We know these courts will disintegrate over time. And right now it's $30,000. If you let it go very long, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo the courts. If you want to see which one is degrading the fastest, it's the basketball court. It's got some pretty good lumps in it right now. It's got a ditch or a trough that has a big pool in it. And that's part of what was being asked to fix for the $5,000. That's why there was an extra $5,000. So my real message is, please put it in the budget so that we can do something so we can cooperate with each other. And yes, we're disappointed, but we understand and we understand there are trade-offs. I wasn't here to hear the discussion, but I think I've made the case on why I'd like you to do kind of longer term planning and look at this project as being one that we can do together. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I would suggest you stick around and listen to Tony's presentation on CIP. Yeah, capital improvements. All right, is there anybody else in the schoolhouse? Please come up to the mic. Tell us your name.
Hello, my name is Chantal Eshkipour and I'm the parish administrator at Christchurch next door. Good evening. I am here tonight with a heavy heart. 1 week ago, our beloved cat, Rosie, was senselessly killed in a hit and run by a speeding car. Rosie belonged to our neighbor and she made our church her home, bringing joy and comfort to all who knew her. Her loss has left a hole in our heart. Rosie crossed Portola Road and was hit. This is not just a personal tragedy. Children, grandparents, and preschoolers cross this road every day, putting themselves at risk from speeding cars. Drivers are reckless, sometimes going 60 miles per hour, making noise and endangering everyone who uses this road. 10, 15 years ago, police presence here was strong. Today, enforcement is minimal to non-existent. When was the last time anyone saw a ticket issued for speeding on Portola Road? This is not just about Rosie. This is about the safety of our entire community. We need immediate action, stronger traffic enforcement, increased police presence, and safety measures for pedestrians, children, and everyone who crosses this road. We cannot wait until someone else, human or animal, is hurt. I'm speaking tonight for Rosie, for our children, for our families, and for everyone who crosses Portola Road. We need to resolve this problem. Let Rosie's life and tragic death be the catalyst for real change. Thank you for listening, and thank you for acting now.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the schoolhouse that would like to speak? All right, I don't see any hands in the schoolhouse. All right, so going online, Rita?
Good evening. I want to say thank you for sending out the message earlier today about the AT&T cables that have been cut. You know, for months, all of us have been suffering with the utilities, with the internet, with cellular service, with home phone service. And, you know, this is good that we're bringing in extra hours, paying for overtime for the sheriff's department. Even though I'm a little confused because we're supposed to have somebody for 24 hours, but maybe I need to reread that. But more about than the arrest, you know, the residents have been spending hours on the phone talking to AT&T, to Comcast, to PG&E when there's outages. And, you know, if there's some kind of message for the town to coordinate to get that fixed for the residents. So many residents have just given up when these things happen now. And you can talk to AT&T. They're not going to say, oh, the lines are cut. You know, the person that you're speaking to from in whatever country that they're from, they're not getting that message. But we as individuals are spending hours on the phone trying to solve these issues with, you know, Comcast and AT&T people that don't even show up. So I just hope that we can coordinate those efforts in some way. And, you know, when we don't have it, you know, as MJ was just presenting how serious wildfire is, Woodside Fire Department is having a talk tomorrow night on Zoom. I think it's at 7:30. And that's what they're going to talk about is how we can communicate during an emergency when we don't have all of these great things such as cell phones and landlines and electricity and possibly not water, how we can communicate to be safe. And I sent out that message on the PV forum earlier. I don't know if it also got out to, if the town has that information and was able to send it out so people can register tomorrow. But we've got to all pull together and take this and make it get fixed forward for all the residents. And, you know, not just focus on the bad people, but secure communications and electricity for the residents. Thank you for listening, and I'm willing to help. I'm not pointing. I'm willing to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Dave Cardinal, you're up next.
Yeah, I have a super mundane point based on the previous one compared to the previous ones. Judith asked about the Firewise discount. In our case with State Farm, they're very public or super public about 5 to 6% discount if you're in a Firewise community. That's either like super great or like, oh, how much is that? So if you're paying, for example, $5,000 a year for your homeowner's insurance, it's $250 a year, which is really good, but it's not by itself enough to move the needle for anybody to rip down a wooden fence or take a tree down or whatever. So I just wanted to provide that as a point of information. So it's not like homeowners insurance discount alone is going to incentivize people, but it's real money. So thanks. That's it for me.
Thank you. Leslie Crease, you're up next.
Hi, all. I'm calling in about the kickoff of construction at the Wedge, and I'm concerned about traffic, both in terms of the delays and in terms of safety for cyclists, hikers, and those of us in cars. I'm hoping that the town and the bicycle committee have plans, pedestrian committee, have plans to help the town mitigate the traffic, or is the town planning anything, or are you just leaving that in Stanford's hands for how you're going to handle the impact, the construction impact? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other hands in the schoolhouse? Any other hands online? All right. I don't see any hands, so I'm going to close oral communications, move on to the consent agenda. So we decided we take public comment first, and then we ask for, okay. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Consent agenda. All right. I don't see any hands in the schoolhouse. I don't see any hands online. So my fellow council members, are there any consent agenda items that you want to pull? No. Okay. In that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda. This is the first time, I believe that we've been able to do this.
Great. Awesome. Good on us. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Veronica, you want to read it through this out loud? I can just call it, I guess. Yeah. So all in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like unanimous, so we'll move on. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. The first item on the regular agenda is receiving an annual report from the farmers market, for the farmers market from Good Roots. So we have somebody here presenting.
We do. We have
Okay, great.
Niall Estep, and he is ready.
Excellent.
Okay, here we go. He's on, and we can see his presentation, so he's ready to go. Let's see if we can get his voice.
There he goes. So sorry about. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for your time, and so sorry for my absence last council meeting. I had some family stuff going on, but yeah, I'm really appreciative to be able to share an update about the farmers market tonight. So my organization is Good Roots Farmers Markets and Events. We hold a variety of community festivals and cultural celebrations. Our two public farmers markets that we manage are the Carmel by the Sea Farmers Market and the Portola Valley. We also manage some corporate farmers markets at a variety of different organizations in Silicon Valley. We've been managing the Portola Farmers Market since 2018, so I've got to work with a variety of different awesome nonprofit, local groups, and just the public, and having a great time doing it. We worked with over 50 different vendors at the farmers market coming and going. But we have a solid 15 to 20 that we have on a weekly basis. Our goal is to grow that number just a bit and expanding that through a variety of different community connections, just so that people are aware of the farmers market. I think people know that when it is, but just create some exciting stuff going on so people want to return. So we're currently looking for, you'll see later in my slide, a hyper local market manager. We've been having kind of trading off market managers the last couple of years, but we're really looking to find somebody within Portola Valley to help manage this. We think it'd be best for the farmers market. In the meantime, we will be managing it with our farmers market manager team. And we will be holding in the next couple months, we'll have an information booth with children's activities. So an idea would be like a coloring sheet. We want to bring in some local artists to do some flyers and get those out. Also build some social media awareness. I was wanting to work on some of these projects last year, but kind of got derailed. I had my first child, and that took on a whole extra job that I'm loving, but has taken on much more time than I was expecting. But yeah, and then expanding our signage onto Portola and Alpine Road, so when people are driving by, they can stop in. So we're looking to enhance some of the farmers market recruitment, adding some of those vendors. We're going to waive the first stall fee for vendors just to try it out. Portola Valley is a special place. It isn't like a typical farmers market where you have, hundreds of, if not thousands of people coming at one time. It's much lower. We have a typical attendees from 150 to upwards to 400 attendees at a market during the peak of summer. But we definitely have some great customers and clientele that support our vendors and have great relationships with them. So yeah, this kind of a quick report. I'm looking forward to any questions or comments that you have to make the farmers market even better. And yeah, thank you for listening to my little presentation tonight.
Thank you, Niall. All right, so what I'd like to do is ask the council members if they have questions for Niall, and then we'll go into the discussion on providing direction to staff for a potential licensing amendment. So why don't I start with you, Helen?
Thank you. Obviously there's quite a few operators in the area. Are you related in any way to the Farmers Association?
So which one?
The West Coast Farmers Association?
I am not.
Okay, thank you. I have a lot of questions. We'll just run through these.
Yep.
So my understanding is we give you a nominal amount annually. The proposal for 23-24 was 7,000. I'm not quite sure where that, oh, that's the old, right, this is the old one. So do you mind if I ask how you've used it before for activities and engagement? I'm not sure we gave you guys any money last year, so.
Yeah, we didn't get any funds last year. I know that when I was kind of talking to some individuals, and they're mentioning that probably any funding that we would get was going to get cut. So, but in the past, we've utilized it for having music at the farmers market, for helping promotional aspects of running social media ads. We've also added additional attendees that are there. So we'll typically have one farmers market manager. We'll have 2 or 3 to have, a kids activity. We've hired various, like for the fall, we've had animals there and kind of petting zoos. We bought pumpkins as a giveaway once. Uh, I think that's a majority of kind of some of the costs that were associated with that.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna keep going here. During the summer, would you ever consider shifting the hours so that you could be open later to, to make it like many of your vendors are prepared food and to have it end at 6, like to have it end at 7 during the summer, kind of idea potentially? Is that
Yeah,
ever an option?
absolutely. We have a very successful we call them third Thursdays in Carmel by the Sea, where we have really it becomes kind of it's at Devendorf Park, the community park there, and we have hundreds of families come out. We get a big name band. We work with a local entity, the Sunset Center, that sponsors a band and stage. So yeah, I'm just to be full transparent. I'm from Carmel and I was born and raised here, so I have a lot of deep connections here. And so I'm still trying to, I know I've been running it since 2018, but kind of if I can get some connections to entities that may help sponsoring that, to getting bands and stages and having extra food trucks and that kind of thing, or I can build that out in a budget just to build out those Thursday summer nights, I'd love to do that.
Okay. I know that you do not offer market match, but do you offer market match at your Carmel site? And are you set up with EBT?
Yes, we do have EBT CalFresh. We have the ability to do that. We just have never really gotten any at either of the markets. We've ran it more in Carmel by the Sea, but Portola Valley very infrequently, like never. But if that's something we want to push and market towards, we can definitely revitalize that program. I think I may need to renew it, but we do have the capability of doing so.
And would you ever, if we wanted you to do market match?
Yeah, so Market Match, I believe we would have to apply through it's like some UC, I think it's like in Berkeley.
It's a state program.
Mhm. I think, but when you apply to the Market Match, I forget what entity it is, but I think they're ran out of Berkeley. But yeah, we would definitely be interested in doing so.
Okay, thank you. And then how much do vendors pay to be part of your nonprofit, the annual fee?
The annual fee for the Portola Valley, I don't believe we've been collecting. We waive a lot of the agricultural vendors fees just because they don't make enough. So so we don't typically charge annual fees for the Portola Valley Farmers Market.
And how much are vendors paying you each week?
$40.
Okay.
And a lot of those.
I'm sorry?
And a lot of the produce vendors, we waive those. I'll give you a specific list, but we've had relationships because obviously without good quality, farmers, it becomes hard. So we waive the farmers, a couple of the farmers discounts.
And it doesn't seem like you have any farmers from the coast and from San Mateo County. I'm just wondering why that is, considering San Mateo has a strong agricultural community and it is an economic driver for the county.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had many of different agricultural vendors and it just has not made enough profitable sense for the farmers. I'll do another push on getting those local farmers out. But yeah, it's more of economics for getting those higher demand farmers to come to the market. But that's definitely a push that we can make.
Okay. And as part of the agreement in the past, a reusable bag ordinance, or at least compostable bags, which are not always very compostable, but I've noticed that many of the bags are not either of those. Have you done any programming and education to help with that, part of the agreement?
Yeah, we definitely that's what I think some of the budget was for, because at Carmel by the Sea, the city does pay for all of our biodegradable green bags. So we supply the farmers with those. We can reintroduce that up at Portola Valley. They are costly for the farmers, but we can definitely make sure that that is top priority.
They are costly, but okay. And that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
I wondered whether there was a place for local talent to actually perform and like kids to be able to play instruments for people who come to the market, whether you ever cultivate that, whether, in other words, not paying other people to come into town, but to allow people to play for your audience.
Yeah, we haven't got a ton of inquiries from the local musicians to play, but in the past when we've set them up in front of the schoolhouse, and that's been very successful. So if there is a Portola Valley music kind of group or anywhere you can suggest me to kind of working with entities that may not have a cost, that just want to have a place to share their music, we would love to have that.
How would they reach out to you? And how would they
can-
know to reach out to you?
Got it. Yeah, we will make some signage at the market that says like no local talent. Please contact us via email, so we could have that at our information booth.
Okay, maybe we can get that, and I can push it too.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, no, love supporting the local talent.
Thank you.
Mary? Thank you. Judith?
Okay. I'd like to know, it says the maximum number of participating merchants shall be 30. What has it in general been, in fact?
Yeah, it ranges between typically like 15 to 20. It will get to maybe 25 in peak summer, but I think right now we're about 15 to 17 at this point.
And what do you have in mind when you mention local artist outreach? What kinds of things are you thinking?
I'm thinking it'd be really cool to find some local artists to create some flyers to help us with promoting of the market. So I think that's kind of the concept there.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was that or also having artists be able to display every so often, like a bit of an art spin on the vendors.
Yeah, we definitely used to have more art vendors. I'd say we typically had like 5 to 6. But I just want to make sure that a core of it is agricultural and and food vendors. I don't want it to become it can become, we want to be a farmer's market with mostly food. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. I was just wondering because I hadn't been aware of past vendors that are, but maybe I just missed those weeks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca?
Yes, I had a question about the market promotion. In the past, many years ago, I remember that I'm blanking on the Maggie, the original person who started the market, used to send out every week a little email that talked about which vendors were coming and what their specials were and their specialties and that sort of thing. It was kind of nice to see what the farmer, the names of the farmers and where they're coming from and what type of products they had. That's sort of fallen off the wayside since she and Brandy also was the one that would then send it out to the PV forum. So I'm just wondering, I know we have some people in town that are really focused on love the farmer's market and they'll send out a note saying, it's happening tomorrow or whatever. But I'm wondering if we couldn't get some more more fulsome information about each week, about who's coming, or if there was, that would help at all with
Yeah, no, we
getting
would
people
love to.
excited.
Yeah, we'd love to highlight like what's fresh in season and what they can get that week at the farmers market. So if you can get me in contact, I don't know if you want me to make the actual email mailer, or I know that Brandy, because I think me and Brandy did do it for a while, and I just sent her like 4 or 5 paragraphs of like what was coming in that week. So I don't know if there's somebody from the town that I can get connected with, but we can definitely make that happen.
Right, because Brandy's not with us in Portola Valley anymore, so we would
Oh
have to
yeah, no,
figure out.
I just meant if there was an entity like a individual who would be if they send out mailers, if we could email them that.
Right. Well, we'll check with the town then. Are you finding that the vendors are happy and feel like there's enough traffic at the market, or what's your
Yeah, I
impression
think
of?
yeah, it's a very unique space and market. I mean, I'm surprised of like the vendor loyalty of the minimal amount of foot traffic that we do get, but because we have such loyal customers that buy a lot, one customer could make the whole vendor's day, which is an amazing relationship that they have. We would love to have more foot traffic. I do want to be sensitive to like marketing it to like a bunch of communities around. I think it's nice and important to make sure that the Portola Valley community members know that it's like kind of their market. So I think kind of we would like to grow the foot traffic, but we do want to do it intentionally.
Okay. And then what I know sometimes the county health department requires hot water access, I think. So how is the market handling that?
Yeah, so any of the vendors that need hot water, they will bring them in their own thermos containers. And so they will have that. But if you don't do sampling, then you don't need the hot water. Or if you have pre-packaged samples, so if they're in like already containers that you're not physically touching or you're not making food, then that bypasses of needing the hot water stations.
And each week, I assume someone from your organization comes to Portola Valley and puts up the signs to kind of block I don't know how that happens, block the parking to keep it open, and then helps, I don't know, route each vendor to where they're supposed to go. Is that how it happens, or is there process?
Yeah, that is correct. So they come a couple hours before the farmers market. They get the signs. They make sure that it's all blocked off, and then they help the vendors load in and make sure they get to their assigned spots.
And then the contract says something about a crosswalk crossing guard service. Is that still happening for the one bus that passes by? And
that is not happening. Yeah, sorry, I should have read that a little better. No, yeah, that is no longer happening. I'm not sure if when that was when we.
Yeah, I'm not sure that any children these days take the bus to town center, but maybe they do. There's no more bus now. Yeah, that's it. One's from coming to Corte Madera and away from Corte Madera. Yeah. But a bunch of kids used to take the bus to the library. They get off to hang out at the library after school. Let's see, my other question was, so in order to have some more of these kind of activities, I think it would be really nice if we did have some sort of monthly, little bit different sort of thing happening. Is that something that could happen or would require budget infusion?
I think I can kind of take the list of everything tonight that we would like to see, and I can, definitely make sure that we get out a portion of them. I just have to make sure that it makes sense for all of them without budget. But maybe I can, put together a list of 10 and make sure that 3 or 4 of them we get done without budget, and then any additional after that we can budget out to see if that's something the council would want to go forward with.
Right, because it seems like once a month, it would be nice to have some little extra, whether it's a cook, somebody like Laura Steck doing her little cook thing, or I don't know, a little musician coming to talk, coming to play, or, whatever, some little special extra thing happening.
Totally. Yeah. I think like for sure what I can say now is that I think we should get a weekly mailer out if we can work with somebody from the town of just, hey, here's some updates of some of the fresh products that are coming into season, and then monthly having some kind of special moment or vendor or something highlighted that kind of builds that excitement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That it, Rebecca? Thank you. Niles, thank you for your presentation. What I'd like to do now is, are you going to do a presentation on the contract? Because what I'd like to do is have the council ask any questions of that portion, then I'll open it for public comment, then we'll bring it back for discussion and give you guys some direction.
Hello, Darcy Smith, Town Manager. So the town currently has what's called a license agreement with the farmer's market vendor, Niall, who you just heard from. He has been running it since 2018, as he said, and there is currently a requirement in the license agreement that the council gets this update every March or April, and then the council provides feedback to the staff, and then an amendment is executed. We would recommend a 2-year amendment term just to provide a little bit more stability, but we're open to that. And then at this point, council could also direct staff to make any changes to the license agreement. Obviously, we need to go negotiate that with Niall, but some items have already been discussed, such as like the crossing guard. So that's you could review and provide feedback on. But this will return back to the council at the next available meeting, likely on the consent agenda, because you also then have to authorize that license agreement amendment to be executed.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Darcy? Any questions on the contract?
I have questions.
Ellen, go ahead.
Just to be clear, so if we were not to want to do a 2-year commitment, we could either do a 1-year or month to month and do an RFP for a different, to see what other vendors are potentially interested, or what are our options?
Yes, those are all options that you could direct staff to work on.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I did have a question. Is there any reason why he can't post directly on the forum or wherever he wants? Does he have to go through the town? So we don't need to involve staff time in that particular endeavor.
Correct. He, like any private person, is able to post on the forum. However, I would just say that since the town is authorizing the event and we are deeply involved in it, that it would be nice for us to be involved in communication. What we
So
do
you
now
want to be.
is we post on our website, we post in our bi-monthly newsletter, and then we post to the forum. So I would suggest something similar.
But there's no reason he can't
Correct.
just submit the comments to you and.
Correct. Yes.
So Darcy, my question for you is, other than deciding on the term and whether we modify the crosswalk, is there any other changes to the contracts that we've, basically approved in the past?
Well, there have been a few different ones that have been approved in the past since 2018. I think like the
How about,
crosswalk, but staff,
the last time, how about that?
I am not aware of any the last time. Staff's recommendation would be to remove the crosswalk, maybe put as needed. I don't see any kids riding the bus and getting off personally, but you never know. And then we would again recommend a longer term just for consistency, 2 years. But we would recommend, the town attorney and I discussed it.
Okay.
But you're
great.
welcome to give us different direction. And I want to emphasize too, the town does not contribute any funding. Councilmember Walter referenced a very old amount, but I've confirmed with the finance director and we do not provide any funding and we just collect a nominal amount. But as of right now, that works. So we have no changes to the pricing.
Got it. Yeah, our $52 in revenue. Okay, with that, I'd like to open this item to public comment. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to comment on this? I don't see any hands. Anybody online? Wait a moment. I don't see any hands online. Okay, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. So, why don't we start with Helen? We'll go through. So tell me what you think about the crosswalk. Tell me what you think about the 2-year term. And then if you have any other proposed changes to the agreement.
Obviously the crosswalk, we haven't heard anything about it, but except for Rosie the cat. And that sounds more like an enforcement situation that's needed than a crosswalk guard from our vendor. If we are moving forward with this contract, I would, we don't have a reusable bag ordinance in town, actually, we don't, but I would, it is in the contract, in the past contract, and it'd be, to add plastic bags, I would get rid of plastic bags and require compostable bags, and they are more expensive for the merchants, which is unfortunate. But I just, I'm just wondering, I am sad that we don't have more San Mateo County vendors because of our beautiful produce that's, that we have in the area. And so but I'm worried about staff time. I am curious to see if we could do an RFP for a different vendor. So I appreciate Good Roots, but I also, I'd like to see more local produce than what we're seeing. Thank you.
And are you proposing that the vendor pay for the compostable bags or that we would put it in our budget?
That the vendor would pay for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mary, comments on the contract?
Yeah, I don't think it's just Rosie the cat. I think we have, I'm not, obviously, I don't think that we need a crosswalk guard there for the market. That's not an important part, but I do think the speed limit and the fact that we have 3 schools, we have 2 schools and a library, and we have a farmer's market, and we have an active town center. We should have a respectful speed situation that accounts for all that. So slightly off topic, but I'm going to forgive myself because we mentioned that it was just Rosie the cat. And this is a major wildlife crossing. The paper bags, I 100% don't understand why I can't get them to stop giving me plastic bags. And I try pretty hard. I try and remember to bring my own. We can all try and remember to bring our own, but we should certainly have something that they can offer to us if we forget our own. That's not, that's either paper or reusable. And I totally get it about San Mateo County and Webb Ranch, and we've had Webb in the past, but there's obviously we're not supporting anybody in particular. I don't think it's up to the town to outreach. I think a lot of us do go over to Half Moon Bay. We can mention it to people. We can do a little of our own outreach. I don't see that we should put out an RFP for another because Good Roots is improved, and I think we could ask them to, hey, do some outreach in San Mateo County. We want, the whole idea why we have a farmer's market is so that we can buy local product. I also want to be very mindful of the fact we have 2 local markets who are relying on are being fair about this, and I don't see that we should be subsidizing a whole lot in the farmer's market. But I really think we've come a long way with this contract over the last 5 years, and I thank you, Good Roots, for the improvements that you made. It makes a big difference.
But did you have a recommendation on the term?
Oh, 2 years for sure. I think they show a willingness to improve on the things that we're suggesting, and give them 2 years to make sure we got all San Mateo County or Santa Clara County products.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Judy?
Okay. First of all, thank you for what you've been doing with the farmers market to date. I saw it at the beginning. It's come a long way, and I like some of the ideas that you're bringing out to increase participation and make people aware of the event each week. Specifically on the contract, I would not put out an RFP. I think the vendors indicated a willingness to work with us. And, you know, a 2-year term, I think, is needed for stability, predictability. Having anything less is going to make people really pressure test cost benefit of being in Portola Valley. And I think there's risk there that it might not make sense with something shorter. I also think I understood the vendor or Mike to say that some of the other local produce farmers are not finding there to be sufficient traffic here necessarily to make the investment to come here. So I do think we've got to realize the economics of putting this on here are pretty thin right now. I do think we can't, if I would want the vendor to provide a couple of bullet points on what's coming up at the market or what might be fresh and new. I think we ought to circulate that in terms of finding a way to put it on the website or, you know, for people who look to the town to tell them what's going on. There should be some information on that. As far as the crosswalk goes, do you know, I do have a question on when that came in, Darcy. Was it last time? Okay.
I worked on this last version, and I recall that it was in the prior license agreement as well. And
So at
so
least
it's
two-
carried over.
2 terms.
Yeah.
Because I don't know enough. I don't like making a decision when I don't have information. And I don't like to take away a safety precaution that was put in here. I mean, I can believe it's very little used, but I don't know that it's very little used. So I would just keep it in there because, you know, people are going way too fast on Portola Road. And the last thing anybody wants is a child getting off of a school bus and not having the right supervision when crossing the street. However, if we learn that literally no one's using it, I would have been open to taking it out, but I don't have that information now. It's safety and I won't support taking it out. And similarly on the plastic bags, I want to know exactly what the cost is. I don't want to approve something that's increasing the cost to vendors who are already stretched to be here to afford something, and all of us in town can bring our own bags. I think is a pretty good community in terms of compliance. So I would not impose the need for to say it has to be compostable or biodegradable on the bags.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yes, so I had some minor things for the actual wording of the contract. There's the map that I feel needs a little bit of updating. There's something reference, part of the parking in the back is set aside for Christchurch activities. That doesn't seem to be relevant to this contract. The license area is very broad. It goes all the way over to beyond the playground and then up to the other street. So it's not clear why we've mapped out such a huge area when the farmer's market is just there in the street, that street parking lot right outside the town hall. So I don't know if we can update that map to show exactly where the actual farmer's market is. And then just a tiny little thing, but one of the things says that the space on the historic schoolhouse steps is for use by town committees, town staff, government agencies, and town service providers. I think I'd like to include town council members in there as well, in case one of us wants to provide some outreach to people coming to the market. And then in terms of some of the things we've been talking about, I would like to see sort of this weekly update, email update, however that gets worked out, whether it's through the town or directly to the PV forum or whatever. I think it's really helpful to promote and remind people about the market. I don't support providing funding at this time as we don't really have any extra available. Let's see my notes here. Oh, the bags. So maybe Catherine could answer this. I thought there was a new law in California that got rid of 100% plastic bags, except maybe for produce. But then it charges, allows or requires the vendor or the grocery store to actually charge for paper bags or for their own bags. So is that something that, is relevant at all in this situation? Or can the vendors charge 15 cents for bags? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I'm familiar with what you're referring to. I would have to look into make sure it applies to farmers markets. I just don't know off the top of my head, but I can look into that.
Okay, because I'm also kind of feel that, yes, I would love to have compostable bags. I would love to have paper bags in there and get rid of all those huge plastic bags. But I think in this environment of the economy, I think it's asking a lot to force the vendors to if they're so much more expensive. But maybe they should look into it. Maybe the farmers market could actually do some of the research to find out where these bags come from and figure out exactly how much they cost. Because I know when I've gone to the market, some of those vendors have these very fancy plastic, very large plastic bags that are quite substantial, and I'm sure they're pricey. They're not the really cheap ones that you used to have in the grocery stores. So the price may not be that different to provide those green bags. So if it's, I think there should be some research, but I don't feel that comfortable right this minute forcing the vendors to pay a lot more money for bags. And I think we should, if we're going to be doing this promotion more frequently, it's just a reminder also for people to bring their own bags. And if we can allow the vendors to charge for the bags, then I think that should be a sort of another encouragement for people to bring their own bags. For the RFP at this time, I don't really support that. I don't think we have the staff bandwidth to handle that. I feel like the vendor is very willing to work with us and to put in place some of these changes. And I also had the opportunity to talk to Maggie Ford, who started the farmers market, whatever it was, 10 years ago or whatever. And she talked a lot about how difficult it is to run farmers markets, how difficult it is to find vendors to come. And it's really critical that you have a manager who has a lot of good relationships with vendors and who has loyal vendors and is able to work with them and to get them to come to your market. And Portola Valley is particularly difficult in the fact that it has so little traffic. And so it's really a tough game, as it were. And so I don't want to disrupt what we have right now. So, and right this minute, the staff has no bandwidth to take on anything else. So I'm perfectly fine with a 2-year contract. And I guess that's it, right, for me?
Okay, great. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. I guess where I come down on this is I would certainly like to encourage the vendor to find more local San Mateo vendors if possible. It may or may not be possible, but certainly we would love it if you can reach out to people that are within the county. I think that's the same place I'm with compostable bags. I don't think I'm ready to actually require them, but I would like to encourage the vendor to look into it, and depending on what the law is, maybe they can sell them. If somebody doesn't have a bag, they can charge them the 15 cents for the bag. But I think I'm willing to leave that at the discretion of the vendor. On the crosswalk, I would be willing to modify the language to something about sort of, as needed, or maybe if a school bus and kids are getting off the school bus, I mean, maybe make it much narrower in it so that's not somebody who's manning the crosswalk from the minute the farmer market opens until it closes, but that maybe it's the one time the bus comes by, somebody's there. And that's what so that's all we're doing right now. It's just because I think what we've done in the past is I think we used to have staff members. I mean, I remember staff members have been out there in the past. So, you know, I guess I have sort of mixed feelings about the value of that. I mean, it is a crosswalk. The crosswalk's at a place with good sight lines on purpose. So I don't feel strongly about that, but I'll leave it to the rest of the council. I would also like to see some kind of weekly update. I think that would really help in terms of marketing. I think getting something out that says these are the vendors and here's what's special, just to remind people that it's there. I'm also very supportive of an A-frame out on Portola and Alpine. That seems like a good idea to get a bit more marketing. So I think anything we can do to help market the farmers market, I think is important. But generally, Niall, I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you've been running the farmers market for us. Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion. And if somebody want to craft, I mean, I think I heard a majority, and I guess we're looking for a recommendation. We're not really looking for.
Correct. I want to make sure.
Of the
Yeah.
sense.
Can you just clarify? I heard some things that sounded more like requirements for marketing or suggestions, maybe.
Oh,
If you just clarify.
I don't think they need to be, so I was just, if we need to do anything to authorize that A-frame, I think we should. I don't think we should require it, but it was mentioned in his presentation and I would be very supportive of it. So I think that that was more what I was after, being
Okay.
supportive of it. And on the compostable bags, at least for me, I was saying that I'd love to encourage the vendor, but I don't think it needs to be a contract. I don't think, from my point of view, I wouldn't require that.
Okay, so what I took away was look at I think the state requirements may apply and no, okay, we'll look at these. We'll look at the state requirements. They're fuzzy, but we do not have a local reusable bag ordinance, but the county has one. So we'll look into this from a regulatory standpoint and I think just defer to that because we have no local regulations. The state regulations would govern us if they're applicable or the county.
Right. I guess all I want to be careful of is I don't want to put an undue, I'm speaking for myself now, but I don't want to put an undue burden on the vendor. So if it's a requirement and they're allowed to sell the bags, I would be fine with that. So, I mean, I would love to get compostable bags. And if you can find a supply of them that aren't crazy expensive, then let's just go for it. But I think my point is I don't want to put something in the contract that adds an additional burden to a vendor where at some point it's just like, this isn't cost effective.
Craig, can I make a comment? I don't know if this is covering some of this and Darcy and Catherine may want to have an opinion. But under sustainability, it says Good Roots will ensure the farmer's market is zero waste. They shall require participating merchants to comply with the reusable bag ordinance and shall require that participating merchants provide compostable serveware and produce bags.
Yeah,
Is there
so that's
anything more to-
already in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So what more are you looking for?
Well, are we enforcing it?
Yeah, we need to, right. That's
It-
my point.
Right. And, and compostable is more expensive, but paper bags, I wasn't thinking about paper bags, actually are similar, a little bit, 2 or 3 cents more. So if they are allowed to, charge, generally the exemptions under the state law, is for like takeaway food often. If you don't have an ordinance, which we don't have a compostable foodware ordinance.
Okay, so Darcy, what,
We will research the compostable
so what other
issue.
directions?
There's other ones which are adding the town council as a required free booth and then cleaning up the map. What's the majority direction on that?
I'm okay with cleaning up the map. That makes sense.
I'm not.
I'm not
go-
sure what.
Yes.
We should go up and down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, let-
Make
yeah.
sure
Yeah,
everybody's
so yeah, why don't you get all of your issues out and then we'll go around one more time because I would like to wrap this up.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. And the weekly update, do you, I
So
would say one thing we could add here as we go around is, do we want to require that in the contract, or we just want to ask the vendor to consider it?
an
So-
option is, what I wrote down is you could add requirements for increased marketing efforts to be coordinated with the town. And we can figure out what we can do. You could say including a weekly update if possible. The town doesn't send out a weekly update right now. We only do it twice a month. So just seek direction on that.
I think it would be nice to ask them to ask, not require, but ask to post to the forum on a regular basis. As part of their marketing.
I don't think we
I-
can.
I think Darcy's language gives enough flexibility to figure that out.
Yeah,
I
I
mean-
I wouldn't be comfortable if the forum were the only marketing
Yeah.
tool. So I think given that we're
In
sponsored.
addition to the
That's
other.
fine. Yes, in addition, that would be great. But, okay. Do you have other comments on Darcy's direction to give Darcy?
I would agree with the map. I would like to see the plastic bags there are a problem to me, so I don't like that. I think that the issue with the crosswalk we need police enforcement, or not police, sheriff enforcement, to ask a vendor or an operator, a farmer's market operator to do enforcement at a crosswalk is a strange ask to me, so. I think that cover,
So you would,
I would,
Just removing it.
I would remove it, and I would get our sheriff to do enforcement.
right, Mary, comments? And again, we're just trying to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Darcy direction, so it's not reopening the whole conversation. Just she asked a series of questions. She's looking direction.
Right. The map, from my point of view, is if anything too small, because the impact on the whole area is, in terms of littering and plastic, is pretty remarkable in the morning afterwards. People eat there, obviously, and they leave their trash, and it's noticeably problematic. And that includes the Christchurch parking lot is not in it, but they're clearly using that, and there's a picnic bench down there that's open for
Right, so-
public.
So if I could narrow your, like, what do you want to do with the map? Like,
I'm
what
happy to
direction-
leave it the way it is right now, but I think it's very important that they hear that we're watching on the cleanup. That's one of the stipulations of the contract.
Judith, you want to give?
So
Darcy
the
direction?
map to me actually works because they're saying the playground is not in the licensed area. The community will rotate the market based on space and needs. I don't see a problem with the map as it is. I don't feel strongly, but I do think delineating areas where the vendors and are entitled to set up and operate is important. So I don't know what changes should be made, because to me, it actually works as is. I don't really feel the need to specify that we can be on the doorstep or whatever. I mean, we could probably do that anyway. It's not limiting. I mean, we own this building and the property. I don't know that it precludes us from being present during the farmer's market if we want to. So again, in the spirit of just keeping it simple, I wouldn't make any change to the map. I don't think you need to say we have the right to be on our own doorstep. And, what was the other, the crosswalk, we don't have a safety, like, we're not going to force the sheriff to be there, just practically speaking. If the vendor is literally never doing this, then fine, but I don't see a reason to change the contract to omit a safety measure at this point.
Rebecca?
Yeah, without knowing whether any children get off, it's hard to make a decision about the crosswalk. I think it's, given that there's not a dedicated local manager for the market, and it's, part of a team that one person comes. I think it's asking a lot for them to go over, watch for the bus to come, and then when it arrives, rush over there to help a child that may or may not be there cross the road. So I think it's asking too much. I hope that our crosswalk has the flags in place. If it doesn't, we should definitely. So at least the children know that. It would be great if the Samtrans bus driver would actually kind of waive the traffic, but that's asking too much. The plastic bags, I think it needs more research about that. I mean, certainly encourage. The language is there right now that they're supposed to be doing it. And so if it's not a huge cost, then probably should enforce that or allow them to charge extra. And then the marketing promotion, I like the language that Darcy came up with. I think that's, and then in terms of the map, I mean, if you're delineating that space because that's what the vendor needs to clean up after the thing, I think, yeah, I think a lot of trash probably happens even after they leave. So I mean, I guess they can run a pass through that for the map, but I find it a little confusing, just what it shows, because it doesn't really show where the setup is. But if it's more of a hassle, then either just add some language about where the setup is, and then just, I don't know if we can just add some language. This area needs to be a pass through, needs to be for cleanup at the end or something.
I have a question about the crosswalk. Catherine, this is for you. Is this like, obviously I don't think Good Roots is staffing the crossing guard situation. And I feel like it's a liability to the town that we've had this in a contract and then we're not making them do it.
Yeah.
Am I accurate in thinking that?
I mean, I will say this was a carryover from the old contract and I did have some questions about whether this made sense. We decided to carry it forward. The council decided to carry it forward. But this crossing guard work is not in the core business, I would say, of a farmer's market. And so I think perhaps we can do some research to find out, whether children actually get off this bus at this time. And whether we can make a recommendation, whether it makes sense to carry this forward again or eliminate it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and so, yeah, I'm in favor of some kind of marketing, and the weekly update is to me the obvious one, but I'm open to the more general language. I agree with Judith. I think we can do whatever we want on the front porch. I think if anything, I'd say on the front porch, if the vendor has a suggestion for a band or somebody who wants to be there, that if it works with the town council, with the town staffing, and there's not somebody else using it, I don't see why we're restricting it to just that list. So I appreciate that they get priority, but I would just say it was priority, not exclusive use. And the map, I'm pretty much happy to keep the map as is, but if there's some small changes that can be done easily, I guess I also want to minimize the amount of staff time that goes into this. But I'm hoping not to turn this into a huge project, which I think it's always easy to do. So, okay. So with that, do you feel like you've got everything you need?
Just a reminder for public comment.
Term 1 or 2 years.
Sorry. Yeah, I think I heard 2 years.
Okay,
Yeah. That's why I was asking you, because I heard pretty much not quite unanimous, but close to unanimous on 2 years. Okay. Anything else? So, and was that I didn't quite hear you.
Oh, you need to take public comment.
I thought I did. And I did after Darcy did her presentation, and there was no hands up. So, thank you. Because this is the discussion.
Can I ask Chantel if we have a trash problem at Christchurch?
No, wait, stop.
Okay.
No, we're gonna move on. We got more things to do in this agenda. So this is
Let's
just.
go.
Yeah, thank you. So Darcy, you got everything you need? Perfect. Okay. Thank you. I did take public comments, so I'm gonna move on. It's, yes, we certainly, so 5-minute break, everybody, and then we'll go on to Tony's budget. All right. Okay. All right, welcome back, everyone. All right, so our next agenda item, get back to the agenda here. Know what it is, but is we're to receive information and provide direction to staff regarding the fiscal year 2026-2027 town budget overview and potentially local controlled funding options. So with that, Tony, you're up.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. So tonight we are going to have a little budget study session over the revenues that will be incorporated in the 26-27 budget. We had one in the last fiscal year. Where we had several study sessions for two for the community, two with the finance committee, and two with the town council. So we're just carrying over this process for 26-27. So basically an overview, we're going to review the types of revenue that the town collects, the authority to collect, and the timing of the revenue. So the revenues that the town does receive are taxes, benefit assessments, fees, charges, and rates, other local revenues, state subventions, grants, and aid. General fund revenues, 76% of our revenues are derived from taxes, with the biggest portion coming from property tax of almost 56% of our taxes. Our tax revenue is from property. Sales and use tax is 5%, utility users tax is 13%, and the business license tax is 2%. So as I stated, 76% of the general fund revenue is derived from taxes. And looking at property tax, the probably most significant piece of legislation the state of California ever passed was Proposition 13 in 1978. That limited the assessment to 1% of the assessed value, where prior to that, local jurisdictions were actually assessing the rate based on market value. Proposition 13 shift that authority from local jurisdictions to the state. Property values were rolled back to 75, 76 levels, and then growth was capped at 2%, which was either the lesser of the 2% growth factor or CPI. And also created the special purpose tax requirement of 2/3 approval. And also any taxes imposed by the legislature required a 2/3 approval of the legislature as well. Other state propositions that have had an impact since then, Proposition 98, that required a minimum percentage of the state budget to be spent on K-12 education. Shifted specified amounts of property tax revenues from the town to educational revenue augmentation funds, which are county funds to support schools. And then other propositions, 58, 60, and 90, have allowed homeowners to transfer existing assessed values between spouses, parents to children, and the most recent one, if you purchase a new home in a new county, you can then transfer your assessed value from your old property to your new property. And we're starting to see a few of those popping up in San Mateo County. So looking at some of the property tax definitions, there's the assessed value, which is the base value that increases 2% per year. There's the supplemental property tax. This is an increase to assessed value due to change in ownership. The unitary property tax is the assessed value of property owned by utilities. T, which is the tax equity allocation, which is very important to our town. Since we were a low tax city prior to the passage of Proposition 13, the tax equity allocation actually raises our minimum property tax revenue to 7%, or approximately 7%. VLF, which is the vehicle license fee, we receive this in lieu of property tax, and this is dedicated for non-basic aid school districts, and it's adjusted annually by the gross assessed valuation growth within the county. ERAF, which is the Education Revenue Augmentation Fund, which is property tax that is shifted to support school funding. Then there's the real property transfer tax. This is a tax imposed on the transfer of ownership of real property. The current rate, since we are a general town, is $1.10 per $1,000 in value. And that amount is currently shared between the county and 10. So in other words, it's 55 cents per $500. Then there's HOPTR, which is the homeowners property tax relief. This is a state reimbursement of homeowners property tax relief exemption of $7,000 of the full value of the dwelling. So looking at the tax levies since 22-23, the average assessed value growth for the town has been 5.1%. The tax levy is currently 7.01% of net AV. And the state rules that apply is that Article 13 and 13A of the California Constitution, and the Revenue and Tax Code sections 95 and 97. So we're projecting another 5% growth in the 26-27 budget, but I'll be using 4.5%, which is actually an increase of 0.5% from the previous year. And that will be the budget for 26-27. So looking at the timeline of property tax, so on January 1st of each year, the assessor does apply a growth factor. And then from January through June, they apply any changes to the tax rolls if it's due to property tax or it's due to property ownership change or any type of reassessment due to remodeling or redevelopment or new construction. By July 1st, the assessor delivers the tax rolls to the auditor. The auditor applies the tax rates and assessments. By August 31st, the treasurer tax collector receives the tax rolls. In September, the treasurer tax collector mails the tax bills. And then in December 10th, first payment is due from taxpayers. In November, we receive our first apportionment of property tax revenue. And then April 10th, the second payment is due from taxpayers. And then by August, we receive the full apportionment for that particular assessment for the current fiscal year. So in this timeline, next month is for 25-26. Taxpayers should be paying their second apportion or second payment to the tax collector. And we will be receiving from May through August the remaining property tax apportionment that we should be receiving. So moving on to sales and use tax, the current rate is 9.375% in the town. 1% of this rate is received from the state rate. It's approximately 11 cents for every tax dollar remitted. Public safety and COPS grants are also funded through the state measures or the state rate. Measure A and W are funded through district add-on rates. And as you can see, that's about 2.125% of our sales tax rate. And as you can see, most of these rates are added on by the county, specifically for transportation, and then a transaction and use tax. And then a small portion is for Caltrain operations. We currently have 104 registered sales permits in the town, and this revenue is deposited into the general fund. On average, we usually receive between $320,000 to $350,000 per year in sales tax revenue, and we're projecting about $350,000 for 26-27. This is a look at the sales tax rates throughout the county. And as you can see, most of them are at 9.375, but any rate that's greater than that amount means there's been an additional transaction and use tax rate established. And these are allowed, so jurisdictions can add an additional rate on top of the state rate. The town has not done that since incorporation. And as I stated earlier, most of the add-on rates are either through the county or through Caltrain. Through the county or Caltrain, those are the jurisdictions that have added on to the sales tax rate. Yeah. Looking at utility and users tax rates, we have 26 telephone providers, 9 energy providers, and 1 water provider. And UUT rate has been 7.5%, and that's been in effect since 7/1/2023. As you know, 5.5% is deposited into the general fund, and 2% is deposited in the town open space. These are all voter approved, and the authority is these particular sections of the municipal code. Business license tax, again, this is part of the municipal code as authority. We generate, or we do issue between 500 and 600 business licenses per year. The most are predominantly contractors or folks who have a fixed place of business in Pacific Grove, or sorry, Portola Valley, sorry, Freudian slip there. And the municipal code section 5.20010 is the section that authorizes the business license tax. Since this is a tax, any change to this tax will require voter approval. And then there's one add-on fee, which is a state fee, SB 1186. And this is for certified accessibility specialists. This is a $4 fee that's charged or added on to each business license. And 10% is remitted to the state. 90% is kept by the town. And that's to use to pay for any certified accessibility specialist. And most of those are through our use of consultants for in the building and planning area. Franchise fees. This is a form of rent that gives franchisees access to town roads and right of way. For cable, it's 5% of gross receipts. And DIFCA, which is the Digital Infrastructure Video Cable Accountability Act, passed by state legislature. Basically, that allows like a cable franchisee to get a state license instead of having individual licenses with 500 separate cities. They get one state license, but then in exchange, they still give the 5% to each jurisdiction, and that's deposited in the general fund. And it could also be used for funding of any type of infrastructure related to the broadcast of governmental channels or educational or public programming. The garbage franchise fee is a negotiated rate, and that is governed by the Consolidated Invested Waste Management Act. Again, that's negotiated. Our current franchise fee is 7.7%. And then we have electric, gas, and water, which is 2%. And those are governed by the Broughton Act, which is the fee is calculated based on number of poles and wires. And then the Franchise Act, which is based on gross receipts. And that's a 2%. So there's really not much the town can do in regards to cable or energy or water in regards to the franchise fees because of these state acts, but the garbage rate is one that can be negotiated with our garbage provider. But I mean, that's if any type of rate change they need, they can approach the town and we can negotiate. So user fees, which is 15% of general fund revenues. And this is our user fee rates, and we're going to be bringing the hopefully we're bringing the user fee study to the council in late April. But yeah, these are the fees charged by planning and building, licenses and permits, our engineering fees, community hall rentals, and field rentals. So in regards to user fees, the question that is asked is it a fee or is it a tax? And any user fee enacted by the town must comply with Proposition 218 and 26. Proposition 218 defined a general tax and a special tax and steps to implement them. New taxes, increases, or property-related assessments subject to vote of the electorate, property owners, and the amount of the fee may not produce revenues that exceed the reasonable cost of providing the service. This is why we have to do user fee studies in order to comply with this Proposition 218. Then in 2010, Proposition 26 further defined tax as any levy, charge, or exaction of any kind imposed by a local government. And then also established 7 exceptions for a fee to be increased and not to be considered a tax. And again, this is why we go through the user fee study to provide that compliance with these 2 propositions. And as stated, these are user fees and they'll be deposited into the fines and forfeitures. It's not a very significant portion of our general fund revenue. However, they are generated by a violation of the law. Most of them are traffic fines or civil fines. It's collected by the county who also establishes the fee schedule. And then the county distributes when the fines are collected minus a small administrative fee. And those are deposited in the general fund. And like I said, it's a very small portion of general fund revenue. State subvention, this is financial aid on top of what we receive from our taxes and our fees. Some of those include gas tax, which is highway users tax, road maintenance and reimbursement account, which is RMRA, our state public safety sales tax, COPS grants, and any federal and state grants and aid. Use of money and property, this is for the most part, it's our interest that is allocated from our investments. As you see, we have about $22.6 million that's currently invested, with the largest portion in Schwab that's currently earning 4.3%. Leif and TechCU are about 3.8, 3.9%. And as I stated earlier, these are invested in accordance with our investment policy. The last 2 fiscal years, last fiscal year, we generated almost $1 million in additional investment earnings with the way our funds were allocated. Whereas in 22-23, we had a loss. So nice turnaround with our investments. In 22-23, yes, we had a loss. Interest rates were not good in 22-23. So the transfers and contributions, transfers are interfund, contributions for capital projects or gas tax, maintenance of effort provisions. Contributions or donations will be used for general purposes or project-specific expenses. And then last year, we adopted the donation and gift acceptance policy. So any donations received will be used based upon the intentions of the donor. And these can be deposited in any fund depending on as designated by the donor. So looking at our fiscal forecast, without any new revenue, our general fund reserve will be below 20% by the end of 27-28. I do believe in my staff report, I had it at 29-30. However, since I wrote that report, put this graph together, we did receive our sheriff's cost for next fiscal year. And the impact to the general fund will be about $500,000 in an increase. I had 408,000 here. $190,000 is the increase in the contract, plus 211,000 the expired credit. And then for 25-26, we were using $100,000 from the ARPA fund, which is the remaining balance from that. And so that fund will not be available for 26-27. So $508,000 will be the increase to the general fund just on the sheriff's contract alone. So that kind of revised the timeline for when we'll be below 20% fund policy or the 20% reserve policy level. And then when we'll be in a deficit position, we'll actually be by the end of 29-30. So it actually moves us up 1 year. So the black line is our fund reserve. The black line, so the red line is reserves, or I'm sorry, the red line is expenses, the green line is revenue. As you can see, our expenses are outpacing our revenues. The blue line is the policy level to 20% of expenses. And then the black line is our projected reserve And as you can see, it's declining precipitously following 27, 28. So fiscal forecast without new revenue will result in a reduction in services, significant reduction in services of town staff, sheriff patrols, fire mitigation, Woodside Fire Protection District, and then we'll have to institute a cap on consultant hours. And we'll also significantly, since we haven't been funding capital improvements through transfers out of the general fund for the last 2 fiscal years, that will be ongoing without any new revenue. So looking at new revenue, we've had this discussion for about 1.5 years. The Finance Committee has done significant work on this, did break out into several working groups, made recommendations to council, previous councils and this council. Guidance from council has been to focus on the following. One being adopt a town charter and increase the real property transfer tax. Number 2 was to impose a parcel tax. And then 3 was to modify the EUT by reallocating 2% from open space to general fund or implementing a new UUT. Implementing a new UUT. Yes. Well, it would require voter approval. No, it's a general tax. If you put it just a general tax, it would require majority approval. Yeah. So that concludes my presentation. Bringing it back to council for discussion, direction, and questions. Again, we're looking for guidance on the revenues for 26-27 budget, and then what any potentially locally controlled funding options in the town charter.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, so at this point, are there any clarifying questions for Tony? And then after the council asks their questions, then we'll go to public comment, then we'll come back for discussion. So Rebecca, any questions on Tony's presentation or staff report?
Yes. In the staff report, it said under salaries and benefits, it said combined, the increase to salaries could be $100,000 at current staffing levels if funded. I wasn't clear what that referred to. Was that just merit pay or also the CPI?
COLA.
Okay, COLA, okay. And then what percent were you calculating for that, for merit at least?
That was a 3% merit on average and a 3% COLA.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, it was 5% merit.
okay. And so when you're talking about sales tax and that we have 104 registered permits for sales tax, what types of things get taxed? Because is it just retail or is it also services that get taxed?
Services do not get taxed. It's
Okay.
all tangible personal property. And in our case, the largest sales tax generator is Rosati's.
Okay, so it's restaurants and the
Restaurants,
grocery store.
Grocery stores, the hardware store, and then any other sales of goods.
So I guess at the hairdresser selling some shampoo,
Booze, yes.
okay, okay. And we're not allowed to tax services? Is that a
Currently,
state law?
sales tax on services is not allowed in the state of California.
Okay. And what about if someone buys a car outside of Portola Valley? Do we get any piece of that?
We do receive some sales tax from that because the sales tax is administered in the district in which the car is registered to. This would have been one area where the TUT would have came into, if we had added TUT,
I'm not sure what.
the transaction and use tax, say we had an additional 0.5% on top of our sales tax, state sales tax rate. Any car that would have been an additional sales tax to the town for the sale of a car.
So we have a TUT?
We do not have a TUT. If
So-
we did have a TUT, this is where we would see the benefits of that is through car sales.
But we are getting some money.
We are
from
getting some,
Carson's.
but
Okay.
it's basically our 1% that we're getting from the state.
And what does it take to have a TUT,
Takes a vote.
but not a charter city?
No,
Oh, okay.
it'll be a general tax, sales tax vote.
And that would impact anything that's bought by a resident outside of,
It would, in effect,
outside of,
sales tax rate in the town.
oh,
But with the TUT, it casts a wider net as far as collecting sales tax.
but the increase, the whole percentage would increase then from 9.375 to something new, or?
It depends on the amount of if you do a half a cent one, quarter of a cent, it could be.
Okay. And that's a 50% plus one vote?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
general tax.
And internet sales, do we get a piece of that?
We do receive some online sale, sales tax from that, yes.
And UUT, have you been, as more and more residents go on solar and battery, they're going to be using a lot less electricity and presumably also going electric. They're using less gas. Are you seeing any impact on UUT?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Still generating about the same amount.
And then the franchise fees, I saw AT&T was not listed and also satellite like Star, whatever, Starlink is not listed as well. Do they not have to pay franchise fees? I saw cable, but I didn't
No,
see.
AT&T pays for telephone. No,
They were under polls.
no, it's PG&E for the poles. And then there's,
So for phone service, then there's no
there's
charge
no,
from
there's no
AT&T?
franchise. Yeah, we just have cable, garbage, and PG&E and Cal Water.
So cable and so nothing
Comcast.
for fiber optics?
Well,
Nothing?
we receive our cable from Comcast.
Okay, but how does AT&T avoid having to pay a franchise fee for their fiber optic and their phone cables? Their phone.
They're not the cable provider.
And you're not allowed to charge a franchise fee for phone and fiber optic,
Do not have a franchise fee in place for phone.
but we could.
We have a UUT for phone.
But could we have a franchise?
I'd have to look into that.
Because they're leasing our space. They're
I'm not
leasing
a-
our airspace,
I'm not aware of a franchise fee for phone.
phone or fiber optic. Okay. So could the town lease town-owned, non-buildable land for like a solar farm or something?
That we'd have to look into that.
Okay. And then you said that we do get a tiny little bit of money for fines.
Yes.
Are those like speeding tickets that happen in Portola Valley, or is it a resident that gets the ticket somewhere in the county? or
It's any fine issued in the town.
Okay, only the town. All right. And then if we were to become a charter city, what other taxes would we be able to consider?
We could, any tax that's currently on the books would still apply. We can make the only thing the charter town grants the town the authority is to increase the property transfer tax.
But not other taxes?
They can increase other taxes, just like every other town.
Transient taxes
Yeah,
or?
the only difference is the transfer tax can be increased by a charter town or charter city.
Wait, say that again? So we have to become a charter city to do the to do
increase
the,
the transfer tax, the real property transfer, we have to be a charter town or charter city.
but we don't need to be a charter city to have a transient tax or have,
DUT, no.
oh, okay. And what about other taxes, like a vacant home tax or a second?
Those
home
all can
tax?
be general town, those are all general taxes, not subject to the town charter requirement.
Oh, okay. So you had said in the thing that one of the impacts that we would have to take on if we don't get any increased revenue would be to reduce look at staff reductions. So would that be current staff? Or would Or would it just mean that we wouldn't be able to fill all the openings that we kind of have?
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to fill the open. And we may have to look at reducing current staff.
Okay. And then do you have any information about the Jarvis ballot?
I do not. Catherine?
I don't have any current information. I mean, it is, as I understand it, there are collecting signatures, and if it gets on the ballot, then, you know, there could be an impact on the real property transfer tax, and the length of time that the town could impose that transfer tax.
Okay.
Yeah, and they, my understanding is they have raised, they've got the signatures. They haven't been verified,
Okay.
but they submitted enough, in theory, they submitted enough signatures.
Okay.
So I think they're waiting for certification or whatever the rate.
And I guess my last question was, so you said in the packet that we need to raise between 1.5 and 2 million a year to pay for the sheriff and everything else. Do you have a sense, you know, we've been talking kind of about potentially a real estate transfer tax. I know we said that we'd discuss rates later, but what are we talking about? What would we need to be able to raise that kind of sum? What would be the percent that we might need, or the rate, or we have to consider other taxes in addition?
We're not prepared to discuss rates at this meeting. We're just looking for general direction focused on the revenues, and what we're seeking is general direction on the type of tax measure. And then, for example, if you were to consider, as Tony said, some specific types, a charter town would follow that.
Okay.
And Rebecca, I think the issue here is when we get to that part of it, we're going to have to decide what we want to fund. Because it's 1.5 to 2 million. I mean, that may or may not be enough depending on what we as a council decide we want to fund. And just to give you, I mean, that number's in sort of the $5 to $10 per thousand range. So that's kind of roughly what we're talking about. But I think until we make some decisions, we don't know what that number is. Right, because the first thing is we got to decide how much we need to raise.
Okay, thank you.
Judith?
Okay, just a couple of clarifying questions here. The user fee impacted by Proposition 218 and 26. I think a lot of that explanation was really basically saying user fees have to be treated carefully and fall within exemptions or exceptions to not be deemed a tax. Is that
right?
The bottom line? Okay.
Deemed a tax, then it could be null and void because then it would require a vote.
Okay. Okay. So we've got that going on and we're pretty comfortable. We're going to fall within an exception, but
right, exactly.
For another day. Okay. So the sheriff's contract news just came in.
Right.
Okay. We'll hear about that at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Looking forward to it. And let's see, the modification of the UUT, the reallocation rather, remind me of the voting requirements because there's the piece of you can reduce the tax, but to reallocate it takes a vote, and I forget what the rules of that are.
I believe, I'll try and answer it, but I believe that if we're not increasing the UUT, then council can redirect.
So our research was that if the council wants to pause it, it would not take a vote of the people. However, if the council wants to change it, it would require a majority vote, a simple majority vote.
Yep.
And that simple majority could authorize basically pausing the special tax for open space and enacting a new tax that would be a general tax, like 50% plus one.
Yeah, so we as a council can only stop collecting the open space related UUT if we were to want to, but we do not have the power, absent a vote of the voters, to just reallocate.
Correct, because
Okay.
it's a new tax, this the general tax.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple steps there, but that's the bottom line.
And-
Okay.
And there's another wrinkle there, water. We couldn't touch the water UUT.
Oh,
but-
right, right.
Yeah, so we could only transfer gas,
Yeah,
energy, and,
okay. And the last one, franchise fees and the garbage, if I recall correctly, we could negotiate the garbage rate?
yes, yeah, the provider could come and say, hey, our cost increased and we need to increase the rate. And so we would negotiate that. And
But it
then
has to be
then council would have to authorize the increased rate.
Okay, so that's not a solution to anything here. Okay.
But isn't this backwards? The franchise fee is what they pay us. We also negotiate what they charge the residents, isn't
Right.
that? Well, those are two separate things, aren't
Right,
they?
but it's similar process.
Right, but one is money to us and the other is how much they're allowed to charge residents. So I think when Judith.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a 8 or 10-year contract in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
no, I
can't-
just want to make sure. I didn't see anything
Yeah.
promising there.
Increasing franchise fees is limit, like the only one we can really look at is
That, okay.
garbage.
Okay, all right, let's not prolong discussion of that then. I think those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, it's extremely overwhelming for me. Taxes has never been my field. And I'd say my take home message is that what were we thinking in 1978 when we gave up on small towns?
Mary, this is questions, clarifying questions.
I'm
only.
trying to figure out this. I think it's a very important point is that we don't understand how small towns got so disadvantaged and why. And that's going to be, for me, that's my wake up moment has been trying to figure out how this happened and whether anybody else except for us is experiencing this problem. So
Well,
those are
there were
questions.
There was low tax cities up and down state when Prop 13 was passed. And so when Prop 13 was passed, the tax rate was frozen.
Yeah.
So towns that prided themselves on, hey, we're a low tax state.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
Town.
the other
Oh, yeah,
the other
state or
caveat to that is the longer you live in your home, you're still based on unless you haven't done any type of reassessment or any type of redevelopment, you're
Right.
still on your 78 tax rate. Your tax.
Yeah,
you
no,
just-
yeah, I get it, but why is nobody paying attention to the fact that the towns are providing for safety and they don't have the money to it just seems like I don't see where it fit into the legislative history you just gave.
Well, there were some actions taken by the legislature to make towns whole. The tax equity allocation was one of them. But then
The what, say that again, that word?
the tax equity allocation,
Tax act,
it brought property tax up to a minimum of 7%.
the tax act.
But for other jurisdictions that provide more services than we do, there are towns that have police and fire.
Yeah.
They receive 15, 16, 17% of the tax allocation. The tax allocation is driven by the legislature. And getting them to make a move is going to be like turning the Titanic around. So.
Okay. The fines and like say somebody puts a fence up in the wrong place, do they have to be go to the county and then be clawed back from the county, or how do fines work?
Oh, we have
fines?
code enforcement.
Yeah.
so that comes directly to us because we are issuing the fine. But whereas if it's a moving violation, it's the San Mateo County
Okay.
Sheriff that's issuing that.
But fines come directly to us.
Code enforcement.
Yeah,
come
code
directly
and anything that's our code.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
I didn't get my answer.
Yeah.
completely.
You know, I was at an event on Sunday night. I talked to members from Belmont, San Carlos, San Mateo, all of them are in deficit. It's across the board, so this is just painful for everyone. A lot of the other cities are dealing with VLF too, but can I just be clear, questions moving to Prop 218, like obviously Prop 218 really constrains what we can do around utilities, right? Or can you clarify how it impacts our utilities? Obviously, we can't, kind of what Councilmember Haskell said, but about Prop 218, you can only really,
So for the town does not own a utility. So we don't have a utility rate subject to the Prop 218 process. What the town is subject to Prop 218 is our user fees, our regulatory fees, all the things that are in our fee schedule. But, you know, let's not get the utility and the UUT confused. So the UUT is voter approved. It's not subject to Prop 218. Only if we had a utility, if the town actually ran a utility, then we'd have to go through the Prop 218 to assess rates.
great, okay, thank you for clarifying that. You had a phrase in your report, the sales tax triple flip. And I was like, what is that?
So 2004 was a very good year, or depending if you're a budget nerd. But so in 2004, the voters approved economic recovery bonds. And to pay for those, they enacted the sales tax triple flip. So they took 0.25% of sales tax from locals to the state. And then the loss of sales tax revenue to the locals was funded by ERAF from the county. And then state aid refilled ERAF from the county. So it was a free card money.
Okay, great, thank you. TUT for sales tax, it's primarily commercial, right? Obviously, you know, like, right? And we have very little commercial in
They're
town.
very little commercial base. But like I said, with a TUT, it would expand the net, because then it would require to any sales that would be brought back to the district, like a car sale.
Right.
It would provide additional sales tax.
So for instance, if we were to expand the use permit at Neely Winery, potentially, and so that we could get more sales tax from Neely Winery, like we only allow, I think the use permit only allows 75 uses per week, whereas like Alpine Inn has 400 people coming in an hour, something like that.
Expanding the use permit would
What, but
impact-
if they
well,
were able to do more,
generate more sales, but they would still be assessed at 9.375%.
right, but if they had more sales.
They had more sales, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any sense of the fines? Obviously, you know, last time I saw the sheriff at the Bike Head Transportation Committee, they only had pulled over a couple of cars for the month.
Yeah, the fines and forfeitures are not a dollar amount for it's around $10,000.
And do we have a breakdown of how much of that comes from moving violations?
I'd have to look at all the remittance advices, but I mean, they just give us how many what was collected and what their fee is. And
and lastly, to divert funds from the open space fund to the general fund, that was your last question. Could you go back to that slide, please? What to do that, does that need to go to a vote to modify the UUT?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that was Councilmember Haskell's question, and that would be the simple majority vote.
Okay, right. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I wonder whether your reallocation of 2% might be better as just increasing the general fund by 2% and stopping the open space.
Yeah.
I think that's more what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if I recall, the finance committee, and we approved a 20% reserve, but that was the minimum, like that
Yes.
was not the, where we had hoped to be, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
more like, that was like, you know, like
that was the floor.
hold the fire alarm, right? Is that, okay, so I think that's important when we talk about this. That's not our goal, as I understand it. Is that
Not the
correct?
goal, but
Yeah,
that's the minimum.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, for this budget overview, what questions are you looking to get clarity on? So there's merit, it sounded like, in your staff report.
Well, that will be, we'll discuss that more when on the expense side.
Okay.
But
So-
for this, it's revenue. And if we're to go after new revenue, which revenue measure would council want us to pursue?
Got it. And are there any, besides the revenue measures, is there anything else you're looking for direction on?
No.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. All right, with that, let me open it up to public comment. So Bob, if you come up to the mic.
As a finance person, business person, my first question about balancing budgets is cost. And I understand that we're not doing that tonight. Is that right?
That's correct.
This is only revenue?
Well, it's going to be revenue and we're going to talk about potential revenue enhancement.
Okay,
So-
I'm going to bring up one that I know is the third rail is what is our participation, or what is the employee participation in benefits? Just because I understand benefits is sensitive, but it's a very expensive thing to have in your budget. And if you have sharing of benefit costs, it really does help your budget. The thing that in watching and listening to this, the thing I noticed the most is when I ask about the black line, I think you'd be best off to have the community see that chart. Because without, and I can tell you that personally, I'm pretty aware of finance. And I know the town is under financial strain, but I heard that a year ago. I haven't seen much of anything since then. And I think from a public standpoint, it's very low vision. And if you're going to ask them for a big decision, having low vision is not a good idea, in my opinion. The other is, I personally question how much sheriff we need, but I understand that that's on the expense side. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in the schoolhouse? I see no hands, so I will go online. Rita?
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I looked at this information earlier and just trying to figure out, I don't know if not talking about the cost side is I'm just trying to figure out how much money, which would each of the three revenue enhancements bring in, and how much is of the current gap that's now in the finances. I know it's not making much sense, but you know, with the recent audits, hopefully almost done and whatnot, we probably have a clearer picture of our actual finances, more than what we had 6 months ago. So with these three revenue enhancements, how much does it cost the town thus far, and how much is it going to cost for it to get to the ballot? And I also noticed that the fines percent in the pie chart was 0. Have we collected any money from fines? You know, I know that there's lots of building going on in our town, and not that I want my neighbors to incur any extra unneeded costs, but we're not getting any money. Is it because we didn't have a code enforcement person, or there was no one available on the weekends when, you know, different things may have happened? I don't know if I, you know, get answers to these type of questions tonight, but you know, as what was just said, we need to have this information current for the residents to get a better picture, because you would want our votes on this, and people aren't going to vote on things that they can't understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Yeah, I would remind you that this is public comment, so I appreciate your public comment of we need to make sure that voters understand what we're doing if they're going to vote for it. But let's try to keep it to comments. Okay, are there any other hands either in the schoolhouse or online? All right, I see no hands online. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, let me close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. So Helen, we'll start with you. Okay, somebody else willing to go first?
So a lot of this is much more nuanced analysis and more precise presentation, but the options are very similar to what the Finance Committee reviewed and we already discussed as a council before. And at that point, we had the 3 different options as our ones to pursue further. I think we had, so I personally would limit tonight's, like if you're looking for direction on what to do in the very near term, I think personally I'm focused on those 3. And I think that for me, the most viable one is the one that we did the polling around, because that's the one we have more visibility into. I also think it gives us the hurdles seemed more, they're all significant efforts and significant coordination and messaging and education and all of that. But it did seem to me to be the one that seemed most viable given what we know today. The open space reallocation is a couple of different steps, and I think that's challenging because, you know, the open space utilities tax was the subject of a significant referendum in town, and that's going to be a challenging thing for people to assess and give up in the near future within the time frame we're talking about. And for me, the charter town plus real estate transfer tax seemed the most viable one to get us on a better path. I'm not saying it does the entire trick, details TBD, but that's the one I would focus on myself.
Thank you. Rebecca?
So I don't support a parcel tax. It would hit every single parcel in town and would be difficult for everyone. I support the town charter change and the real property transfer tax, because given these numbers you're talking about, possibly needing 1.5 to 2 million, that's the only one that could bring in close to that. Potentially, assuming we continue to sell homes that are assessed at 300,000, but sell for 6 million or 8 million. And then in terms of the UUT, currently the Open Space Fund, just from from investment earnings, brings in about 400,000 a year. The 2% UUT that gets sent to them each year is another 400,000 a year. While I do support temporarily diverting that money, I think that's a future thing. If somehow the transfer tax just doesn't bring in enough money because people aren't selling homes often enough, we may have to revisit, assuming, of course, that the town supports that. If in the end, in a few years, it's still not bringing in adequate, or our expenses are really continuing to outpace our revenues, we could revisit the open space UUT. But I would not recommend doing 2 things on the ballot. I think we have to stick to one. And then, I really support getting more information out to the town about, just like Bob said, that graph that's, with it fixed to the new information that we just got from the sheriff. And, you know, when we discuss expenses next time, you know, that sheriff's contract is a little absurd, given, as Chantal had talked about, you know, we don't, I mean, I don't see a lot of cars, sheriff's cars driving around. We heard that they're not ticketing people, but we have people driving potentially 60 miles an hour on the road. So, and then we've got all these copper thefts. So, you know, a little bit more presence one would expect when you're paying right now 2.1 million. Next year would be 2.6 million. So I kind of would expect quite a bit of presence for that kind of money. But anyway, so that's something that we're going to have to talk about quite a bit next time. But so that's my feedback, is supporting a town charter and real property transfer tax, because I don't think we have that much choice, really. And then, but I do think we need to get some more information about what's going on with the Jarvis and how that's polling. But yeah, it boggles my mind that people think that money grows on trees and doesn't cost anything, and that people shouldn't pay their share, you know, to support the services they need. But okay.
Thank you. Mary? Mike?
Yes, it's a relatively simple decision for me, and quite clear. There are some innuendos for later on down the line, like this, spreading the net so we can see some of the income for automobile sales, et cetera, because that it seems like a real logical thing, that the people who drive on your roads should be paying you for it. I have long been a supporter of making the town a town charter town. This is obviously a very small component of that particular movement, and it's been pretty obvious that this would make the critical difference in our future as a town. To just take a moment to say that we are an enormously lucky community, that it is, we have safety, even without the sheriff, we have a good deal of safety, let's face it, and we have a phenomenal quality of life. We all know we live in a utopian community. We share it, and we share the responsibility for it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to share some of the cost too, because this town cannot operate without the revenue that's required. So, and there's really no out, and I've spent a good deal of time looking at the other options. I feel completely confident that we need to have a real estate property transfer tax. And I think it should be a large enough one so that we can function as the community that operates on a set of ideals which are expensive, including open space and including access to nature and including environmental sensitivity. That's what we have to offer, and we can afford it. And I think people can afford this. So, and that's obviously not my decision to make. That's their decision to make. But I think living here has a financial responsibility.
Thank you. Ellen?
Thank you. So we have bad choices in front of us. You know, we are facing strong headwinds. California is heavily taxed. And this community is heavily taxed as well already. So I'm concerned because the UUT, we're taxing people right now, the open space, and not using the open space funds, right? For instance. So I'm very worried about asking for yet another tax. But in terms of the parcel tax, I wish we could do the parcel tax, but we have been told people won't pay the amount that we need repeatedly. Because that really is that everyone would pay their share as we go. Which leaves us with what, the Howard Jarvis is calling to save Prop 13. Like, this is gonna be a very heavy lift. And I don't like it, but I think I wish, I don't like that we would be up against the Howard Jarvis at a state level, running against something that they're phrasing as to save Prop 13, don't pass the transfer tax, and we'll have I am not optimistic, and I am worried. But I think that's where we need to go. I've heard my other colleagues, the other three. So it looks like that's where we need to go. I don't know if potentially we could put part of the UUT for the open space on hold for a short time without doing until we can get to it, so that people understand that we're not trying to tax and tax and tax. I don't know if that's an option. I didn't ask that during, but I am interested in trying to see if there's some way we could do that. But that would need to be down the road for whatever we do with the UUT, because I do not want it to confuse the issue. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think, we clearly need to raise revenues. The method that we're running the government at the moment is unsustainable. We're not doing capital improvements. We heard from the public earlier in oral communications about pickleball courts. We're not putting money into our capital improvement projects, and that can only go on so long before you have catastrophic collapse. So not doing anything just isn't an option. I'm not in favor of the open space, both because I think it's a multi-step process, and I think it's one of our core values. The parcel tax, I don't particularly like, because I think it does put a burden on everybody. And the thing I like about the real estate transfer tax is I think the value of your home when you sell it is increased because you're in this wonderful community. And that the fact that we've created this wonderful community, the fact that your real estate is worth more, it seems reasonable to me that paying a small portion, 0.5% or 1% on that transfer feels reasonable to me. It also adjusts for inflation, which is another reason I like it. Partial taxes don't, they're just a flat number unless you vote for them again. I would very much be in favor, but again, I don't think we need to build it into what we're doing. Is if for somehow we raise too much money, I think we just adjust the UUT taxes down. We can always do that. We've done it in the past. We had dropped our UUT tax for a while because we didn't need to collect as much. So we could drop the general or the open space. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. So I like the fact that we'd have some different levers that we could run, but I think it's critical that we get our reserve back to a reasonable place. I think it's critical that we start funding our capital improvement projects. And then I think that the services that this town expects, particularly in Park and Rec, it takes money to provide those. And we're at the point where we're starting to not do a good job of that. So we got to do something here. So I'd very much go for the real estate transfer tax. I think it's the right thing for us to do. So Tony, does that give you, I think you've heard from all of us, does that give you enough direction?
I'm pretty much hearing a consensus.
I think you are. So is there anything else you need from us?
No, I'm good.
Great. All right.
That this is the first time I've ever really understood a good lecture on taxes before. And I'd like to thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
I feel that my eyes have been opened.
Okay, well, with that, we'll close agenda item 7B, knowing that Mary knows the tax structure better. Woohoo! Okay, moving on to 8. Are there any council subcommittee, liaison committee, or? I did a long time ago, before we start our discussion. Yeah. Well, I don't know what, so.
Maybe he needs to talk.
Well, anyway, we're at 8. So Does anybody have any, there weren't any in the packet, which is fine. Is there any reports or a report that people need to make? Looking down the line, I see nothing.
Shall I say that I went to MROSD?
Yeah, if you just keep it short.
I'll just do that. I'll just say I attended the MROSD nature let's see, resource evaluation of the Hawthorne's alternatives and gave my opinion, and which I said was not anybody, it was mine and mine only. It's moving forward to the entire board of MROSD.
Thank you. And then the only,
Actually, it also occurred today at 6 that there was a special meeting.
okay, got it. Did you have something?
Just reporting out, CCAG, did, vote for its
So
legislative
can I-
package.
Hey, could I ask you guys, hey, Bob, hey, guys, can I ask you to go outside and talk? Thank you. Go ahead, Helen, please.
So CCAG did vote for its legislative package, and one of them I wanted to make sure that you knew about was e-bikes. So they are supporting some e-bike legislation. It's the same one that the League of Cities is supporting. So I did want to update you on that. As well as Sean Champentier, can't pronounce his last name, sorry. He has been executive director, is now moving to the city of Pacifica as their new executive director. CCAG will now be the city manager for Pacifica.
I do have one other thing I'd like to say. I'm going this weekend to the Cal Cities, the Housing, Community and Economic Development Policy Committee. And they're looking at a couple of housing bills, one of which will involve, they want our opinion on a bill that would require the option to have remote inspection of construction sites. And another one that would require childcare for to be added to our general plan elements in various places. So that will be the discussion.
Thank you. And then the only thing I had, I went on I was at a Stanford meeting today where we walked the sort of layout of some of the new trails that they're proposing and basically collected input. The trail subcommittee is going to meet and discuss the different options and potentially some alternatives, collate that stuff, and then basically work back through planning and building to get that stuff back to Stanford. So that's where we are on that. So, okay. With that, I'm going to open it up to public comment on reports. So anybody in the schoolhouse? No. Anybody online? So Dave's hand's not up on my screen. Is he on yours? Okay, just checking before I move on. Okay, with that, I'm going to close public comment. I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.